Well, hey there, Mama, and welcome back to the Mom's Overcoming Overwhelm podcast, episode number 215. I'm Emily McDermott, and I'm here beside you on this journey as we work together to declutter your home, head, and heart. I am really excited to bring you this episode today with my friend, Dr. Amber Curtis. And she is the CEO of Solutions for Simplicity, is a certified life coach and behavioral science professor who equips overwhelmed women with science-backed strategies to overcome the hidden sources of stress stealing your time and joy. She has an amazing story to share where she actually was suicidal from the stress of keeping up with her demanding job while raising 4 young boys. And she's on a mission to make sure no other mom ever burns out like she did. She has coaching, group programs, her More Time for Mom podcast, and a YouTube channel offering proven ways to work with instead of against your brain and body so you can do more, stress less, and be happier. And I love this conversation because I love neuroscience and behavioral science. And really, we talk about neurotags and some of these neural pathways that have been really shaping our behavior. Also, how our experiences and how we were parented impacts how we're parenting our own children, and also the biological connection where moms and babies actually share DNA and how that can really impact us when our kids are having a tough time and we internalize that and then bring it with us to work and other areas of our lives. We talk about this and so much more, and there's a lot in the show notes today, including a free masterclass that Dr. Amber is offering, 6 hidden sources of stress and how to fix them. So without further ado, grab that notebook and pen and let's dive into today's conversation with Dr. Amber Curtis. Hey Mama, are you tired of your cluttered home and mile-long to-do lists but are too overwhelmed to know where to start? Do you lack the time and motivation and don't think you'll ever conquer the clutter? You're in the right place. I'm Emily, wife, boy mom, and declutter coach who has overcome the overwhelm in my own life through decluttering and simplifying. I believe every mom deserves the peace that comes from a clutter-free home. Ready to get your life back? Let's declutter your home, head, and heart together. Well, hi, Amber. Welcome to the Mom's Overcoming Overwhelm podcast. I am very excited to chat with you today.
Thank you, Emily. I am so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, you and I were fellow camp counselors at the Supermom Summer Camp, which I was so excited to be a camp counselor because I had always wanted to be one. And then I was like, oh, I listened to all the sessions and I'm like, wait, somebody that is like focusing on overwhelmed moms that knows about all the neuroscience and everything. So I knew that we had to connect. And I'm just, yeah, I am so excited to dive into all the things because I totally geek out on all of like the science behind what we do, why we do what we do and all of that. So I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you. I am so excited too because I think more women just need to know that they are not crazy. We feel crazy and people can tell us we're crazy or they don't like the way that we might be reacting to something. And I'm on a mission to help moms understand the root cause of your stress and overwhelm so that you can give yourself grace, but you also know how to work with yourself in those moments. And the more that you understand all of this, the more others can understand you.
Yes. Oh, so important. Well, I would love it if you could tell us just a little bit about you and your family, and you touched on how you serve women, and then maybe like one thing you like to do for fun.
Okay, great. So I am a mom of 4. I have 4 boys, ages 12, 10, 7, and 3. So very much in the thick of it. And I was your classic type A perfectionist, high achiever, felt like I had everything together until I had kids. And I just spiraled. I actually fell into a really deep depression after I had my first son because I couldn't keep up. I couldn't perform at my old standards, and I didn't understand why. I thought something was wrong with me, that I was a failure. And once I recovered and got help for that, thank goodness, I just was still on this mission to figure out how to put all the puzzle pieces of my life together just so that I could be the perfect wife and still be the perfect professor because I am a behavioral science professor by day. and then, be the wife and mom I wanted to be at home. And the struggle just never got any easier. So fast forward several years, add additional kids into the mix, and I thought the answer was going to be in productivity, time management, but the more I've learned and the more that I have gotten coaching myself, I've just realized how deeply our past experiences can work their way into our nervous system. And then we just need to really understand what's really going on behind our stress and overwhelm. So I started my side business. It has now become so much more than I ever imagined. I'm a certified life coach, and I am on a mission to help women really live a simpler, more purposeful, and productive life. But most importantly, separate their self-worth from their productivity and really work from peace, not from pressure.
Oh, I love that so much. Okay, tell me one thing you want to do, you like to do for fun, and
Ah,
then I'm going to
okay.
dive into some ways we are so similar.
So, of course, my brain instantly freezes, right? What do I do for fun? I would describe myself still to this day as that overworker, right? I have to be achieving and doing something in order to feel good about myself. But one thing that I have really been trying to be better at as we get into this perimenopausal phase of life is exercise. And I've been having a lot of fun with some of the strength training workouts that I've gotten into.
Oh, good. Yes, I love that so much. And for me, like the strength training and going on walks and
Yes.
everything, it's just like the mental health benefits have been so good because I'm right in a similar phase of life as you. And similar to you, I was always the type A perfectionist and then had these kids, and I'm like, I don't understand like where I don't know how to get have them do what I want them to do essentially.
Yes,
So
they
I
are
was
their own
at
people.
they totally are. So I went to therapy. I had EMDR to kind of go through some of the previous experiences that I had had as a child and how I was parented and the expectations I placed on my own parenting based upon how I was parented, which was very much like essentially do what you're told, stay in the lane, A's, get the praise, all of those things. And didn't realize even when my kids were really young that I was projecting that same kind of mindset onto my own kids. And it's still a journey.
Yeah.
I see perfectionist tendencies, especially in my oldest, and I cringe a little bit because I try very hard to be focusing more on the effort and not the outcome and all of these things. But it is certainly a process. And I always say, when people will say, even though I'm almost 45, they'll be like, "Do you want to have more kids?" And I'm like, "Well, no, because motherhood broke me. Like it broke me. Like I'm back
In the
to
best way,
in the
but
best way."
absolutely, yes.
And I'm kind of getting back together, but it was the most transformative experience of my life and really caused a lot of cause for reflection and having to do that kind of critical, not self-critical, but to be able to really look at my experiences in a new light. So yeah, I've definitely benefited from that. And
I
yeah.
I just love that you speak so openly about that
Mhm.
because I know that when I was struggling, the last thing I wanted anybody to know was that I was having a hard time, right? And I thought I was the only one. I was so sure that asking for help would have been weak. And again, like I just needed to figure this all out myself. And once we get past that and we realize how common all of the sentiments you expressed are, I mean, goodness, we just have to lean on each other and normalize the fact that being a mother is the greatest gift in the world, but also the biggest identity crisis we'll ever have. You are no longer, you don't get to be the child anymore, right? As much of a grown-up as I know I thought I was before I had kids, whew, right? Once you are a mother, you have to shift your entire life's focus to meet the new expectations and needs of your family. But again, then we kind of, I think, swing too far in that direction and we lose ourselves as mothers. And then now we are invited to come back to like, okay, who am I as a mother and above and beyond a mother so that we're not putting our entire sense of self-worth into just motherhood either, right? We don't want it to be all about work. We don't want it to be all about motherhood. We want to know who we are. And it's an ever blossoming journey.
That is very true. And you gave some hints as to some seasons of your motherhood. You mentioned after your first child where you really struggled. I would love if you could just give us an example. It doesn't have to be that exact experience, but when you were feeling completely overwhelmed and kind of what was going on at the time, when did you realize, like, okay, something needs to change? I can't do this anymore. And what steps did you take to kind of get out of that overwhelm?
I would love to give you several examples and I'll try to keep it brief, but there have just been so many different phases of motherhood. I'm sure there will continue to be. The first one for me is always the most profound. Going from zero kid to one kid was so fundamentally beyond anything I could have comprehended. But for my own long backstory, but I ended up starting a very demanding job as a professor just 2 weeks after my first son was born. And retrospect, hindsight is 2020. That was not smart, but I was completely overwhelmed trying to have my head in the game of what I needed to do for all of my academic responsibilities, while then being in the midst of that postpartum days and just I could never have appreciated the biological pull I would have had to just be fully focused on my son. So, even with my husband's wonderful support, I really, I mean, if I'm honest, I just didn't even trust that anyone besides me could give my son what he needed. And, I didn't have words at the time to recognize postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression. We had no family nearby, so my husband and I were trying to do everything ourselves. And of course, it didn't work, but I just thought that I should be able to figure it all out. And that's how I ended up depressed and suicidal. Once I got help from that, again, things went pretty well until I had my third son, and we were outnumbered. And my third son came early, so I was not finished with all of the big work projects I thought I was going to wrap up before he came. And I spent the first several weeks of that postpartum period at my computer, with him in the carrier on my chest, but trying to crank out these research articles. And I really regret that I was so focused on meeting these deadlines and getting the work done that I didn't even really appreciate that there he was, right? And so I just have lived and learned. And then even in current times, I regularly get overwhelmed with four young kids bouncing around, talking at me all the time, their different personalities, their emotional needs, and balancing all of that with my triggers and feeling overstimulated. But I'm so thankful to now have the resources that I do to recognize, firstly, that there's nothing wrong with getting overwhelmed, but that there is, secondly, this real underlying reason why you find those things so triggering, so that you can do the deep inner work and try to change your default response. Try to handle those situations so much differently. And that's making a very profound difference in my life. I don't know what my kids will someday say looking back, but I feel like a fundamentally different person and mother 4 kids in than I certainly did up until now.
Yeah, that resonates so much because growing up, if you were to say, like, can you remember any time you were angry? I can probably remember maybe 5 times in my childhood, maybe stretching it, where I felt like actually angry, and that I would maybe feel the need to lash out physically. Okay. Then I become a mom and it is constant. I'm constantly being triggered, more so when they were really young, having the touched out experience, having the noise. I mean, they're still noisy, but having all of the noise and recognizing and doing some research, finding out about the concept of highly sensitive people that, oh, wow, I'm sensitive to caffeine, I'm sensitive to clutter, I'm sensitive to noise and touch and all these things.
Mhm.
But the stimuli are not always going to be under my control. But the response was so not expected from me, like mild-mannered perfectionist, do what I'm told, and I'm lashing out at my kids constantly. So
Same.
that, yeah, and that is just like one of those things, the awareness and then being able to build some of those strategies in your toolkit and to know, okay, the fact that I'm getting triggered, there are some things maybe I can help, mitigate that. And we're going to talk maybe about that too. But you may still be triggered, and that doesn't make you a bad mom just because you are triggered. It's more about that response. And you mentioned the juggling and the emotional load that we have to carry for ourselves and then also for our families. And when you had your session with Lori for the Supermom summit, I was thinking like, oh yeah, you don't think about all the things we have to manage sometimes until somebody starts making a list and you're like, wait, I do that and that and that.
Right?
So we have
Yes.
like appointments and birthdays, like remembering, like, for example, Sean likes goldfish. Andrew doesn't like goldfish, but he likes Cheez-Its, like things like that, which you don't even know why it's taking up space in your brain, but you are responsible for knowing that. And we're carrying the emotional load of all of our family members so that things stick with us in a different way than perhaps our spouses. And I would love it if you could talk a little bit about that from like a biological standpoint, because I just find it fascinating some of the reasons why we as women and as moms carry that emotional load with us, because it's substantial.
It is. And I mean, I'm so glad that everyone, pretty much everyone, knows about this concept of the mental load these days. Again, I'd never heard of anything like that before. I had never heard the term mom guilt until I was experiencing this kind of thing. But biologically, we as women are programmed to be attuned to our children, and we feel their emotions in our body. There is incredible research that is bringing to light the fact that moms and children's DNA crosses over in the womb and stays there. And so scientists are still trying to figure out all of these workings and how it actually happens. But for the longest time, I would just tell my husband that like I feel it in my body when he would get upset at a child. I'm like, babe, you can't handle this situation that way because I'm feeling attacked. And I don't mean for that to come across the wrong way. Because my husband is an amazing parent and very gentle with the boys, but naturally loses his, gets frustrated just like I do. And so we've just had to learn and communicate over the years that, wow, okay, moms have this innate sense of what their children are going through. And that's so beautiful, but it is incredibly consuming. And it also makes it difficult for us to differentiate where we end and the child begins, or vice versa. So, you might just naturally be thinking about all these things going on for your child, and that takes up so much of your present cognitive focus that you do not have the ability to actually get, productive work done. I talk with so many moms that, in addition to the mental load, have something come up in their family that could seem relatively minor, but they don't even realize that they then bring that experience with them to work, and they're mulling it over in the back of their mind all day long. And then they're frustrated that they had this short little window where they needed to get a project done, but they just couldn't actually make it happen. And then they, go home and they're having trouble being present at home because they're still thinking about the project that's not finished. And it becomes a really, really vicious cycle. But again, I think so much of it ties back to our early childhood experiences and the way that our nervous systems learned to regulate themselves. You've done so much beautiful work on this and realized that the way you were parented really informed what you feel safe around now and what it takes for you to feel safe, right? That, and I'm exactly the same, that my nervous system feels safe and regulated when I perceive that everything is in its place, everything is under control. I know what's coming. Everyone likes me and is happy at me. Everybody else is feeling good, right? Even if it has nothing to do with me, my brain wants to know that someone is in a good mood, because if not, I'm that classic people pleaser that has to fix the situation before I can feel safe. And, I love talking about attachment styles and ways that the connection or lack thereof that we had with our caregivers as young children affects the way that we can connect to our spouses, but also to our children. And if you were a person who learned to stifle your own emotions, or you felt unsafe having emotions because they made your caregivers act out in frustration or tell you it wasn't important or whatever else. These are circumstances that got wired into your brain, and all of our present action, well over 90% of our current thoughts and beliefs and actions really stem from this neural wiring that over time got strengthened to solidify how we perceived we needed to be in order to earn love and belonging from other people. And that's then, as you said, what we project onto other people and what we expect them to do in order for us to feel good so that we can love them in return. One of the biggest I think, eye-opening lessons I've learned as a mom is that you love your children unconditionally, but your response to their behavior is inherently conditional on how regulated you are and how emotionally regulated you can stay in the midst of their dysregulation. No one prepares you for holding your peace and calm when your child is melting down, especially if it's in public and you feel the judgment of other people. And again, like in your body, you don't even realize that you're having this fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, one of these classic stress responses that is flooding your body with all of these neurochemicals. And until you restore your sense of calm and safety in your body, then you are not going to be able to access your prefrontal cortex, the problem solving part of your brain, to even think about solutions. And similarly, your child is not open to receiving information when he or she is in that dysregulated state. So all of human relationships, it really comes down to feeling safe and feeling connected. But again, our current actions are driven by what your brain predicts is going to happen. So you're in a current situation, again, child is melting down, your brain gives you a response based on how you were treated as a child in that moment, right? How you were responded to. And it's a lot of deep work to realize that maybe that wasn't so helpful. Maybe it was actually harmful. And we're never trying to blame. We're not trying to make anyone feel worse. But I think we can also recognize that parenting has changed profoundly over the years. And, the old parenting strategies really did expect that children would be compliant and quiet and still and follow the rules. And those are all, I think, good ends in and of themselves. But every child is different. And when they are, quote unquote, acting out, we now realize they are simply trying to express a need or a desire that they can't verbalize. And when we, again, are dysregulated ourselves, we cannot handle their needs. We don't have the emotional capacity to be there for them emotionally. And it just all spirals out of control. And we can, risk wounding our relationship with our children, which none of us would ever intentionally want to do. So it's just really helpful to recognize, again, like big takeaways, just so helpful to recognize that maybe your brain did respond to your parenting, your past experiences in ways that wired your brain to feel safe under certain conditions. And now your present responses are all driven by that underlying need for safety that feels disrupted and threatened by the current perceived threat. And perceived is the operative word, right?
Yeah, I definitely in different phases of my motherhood, and I didn't have the verbiage around it to know that I was seeking safety, and that's like why I was reacting in that way. But again, and just the little glimpse into kind of how I was parented, both of the boys, but especially my youngest, would react physically with hitting me. And the second that I would get hit, I would just immediately start to cry, like usually like sobbing. And I have been able to get some medication kind of help because part of it was hormonal. And anyway, we don't have to get into all of that. But point being that that was like my body was like flight. Like I needed to go away. I needed to go to my special closet and close the door and lay down and to be able to regulate myself. But now it's kind of manifesting in a different way that he is very curious and always asking why in response to things that we ask him to do. So if we're saying, okay, you need to make your bed before you can do your tablet, the question is why. And what I realized from a friend of mine who's a parent coach, and she said, well, what do you think his desire is? Like, what is the unmet need? And the previous me would say, well, he's not wanting to listen to me. He's not doing the thing that he's supposed to do. And that's frustrating to me because when I was growing up, you were told what to do and you did it. You didn't ask why. You didn't go back and forth. This was the expectation. And so that's the expectation I'm coming with. And she said, well, what if it's curiosity? What if he just wants to understand really why he has to do it in this order? And that really opened things up for me that he wasn't trying to just be belligerent. He wasn't trying to be difficult. He has a deep need for knowledge and understanding the why of things, which he gets from my husband. He's a questioner. And I have had to shift that in my motherhood because I'm still triggered by it and still sometimes have to pass things off to my husband when it just seems like I can't give an answer that is going to satisfy him. But I was able to see really, and I know you used this concept, mentioned neurotags, and I'd like you to just define that in a second, that my neurotags are like, I am expecting him to do what he's told the first time because that's how I grew up.
Yes.
And I need to recognize that he's not trying to make me have these fight, flight, freeze or fawn responses. He's just genuinely wanting to know the truth of the situation. So those are some recent kind of aha moments that I've had. But I feel like as they grow, there's just more and more.
Oh,
It's
it's
always
uncharted
changing.
territory. Absolutely. And I love that you shared that example. I mean, your vulnerability is just so appreciated. I would love to share a personal example myself as an example of these neurotags that I'll elaborate on. But a couple months ago, I was dishing out dinner in the kitchen, and one of my ongoing frustrations is that I have very picky eaters, and people seem to come and eat and then get up from the table at different times. And I just can't seem to have that perfect family dinner that I dream of, right? By the time I get everybody dished out, then other people are already done and leaving. And anyway, so I'm in the process of trying to dish out some canned corn, and my little 3-year-old insists on carrying his own plate to the table. And I was like, be so careful about this, right? And sure enough, he got a couple of steps forward, and the whole plate tipped, and all the buttered corn goes all over the floor. And in that moment, I didn't even think twice. I just was like, oh, here, let's take your plate back and get you some more. And it then dawned on me as I'm dishing him out more corn that that is absolutely not how the situation would have been responded to when I was a little girl. And it could have gone a few different ways. Again, I appreciate my parents so much and my father in particular. So I'm always trying to find that balance of sharing these relatable experiences without ever intending anything, negative on my parents. But, my father would have either raised his voice or at a minimum had a very critical expression, probably made a grunting sound or some big expression of disappointment. And even in thinking of that in that moment, dishing out the corn, I just felt again in my body the cringe of I'm such a failure. I never get it right. I always mess up. I've made my dad unhappy. And I've been mulling this over ever since because somehow through this work that I've done, I really have been able to reprogram my brain from feeling threatened when corn gets spilled on the floor and feeling that incessant need to please everyone and be perfect and have things be perfect in order for me to feel safe and good and loved, to then not even having any of that reaction, but just instantly being like, oh, hey, no big deal. We'll clean it up. Let's get you more corn. So neurotags then are these strengthened neural pathways where information has repeatedly been conveyed in your mind over time. And so the more that you lived a certain experience or received a certain message, the more that neural connection got strengthened, not just in your brain, but also in your entire nervous system, right? We've got the central nervous system in our brain, which is very complex, but then the peripheral nervous system as well. And so trauma gets stored in the body as this very physical set of responses. It's both the emotional vibration that we feel of whatever feeling, emotion we're going through at that time, but then the physical sensation as well. And so these neurotags are what dominate our current behavior because it's how the brain saves energy, right? It relies on past information to predict future circumstances, and it's then always responding in the way that you learned to respond or others responded to you in the past. But the amazing news is that our brains are essentially a blank canvas, right? We are starting from our current neurotags, but we have infinite capability to rewire that programming, to create new neural connections, all about neuroplasticity. And it's just so, I think, encouraging to know that whatever we've experienced up to this point, even very real, legitimate trauma, you really can heal all of that within yourself. And then I guess I just want to offer that a lot of times I was this person that you hear the word trauma and you're like, oh my gosh, that's definitely not me. I had a great childhood, which for the most part we probably did. However, there is a very important concept called complex trauma, where again, there's so much that factors into it, and anything that was conditional, right? Any message we received that we needed to be or do a certain thing in order to receive attention, safety, love, belonging, connection. None of this was necessarily even verbalized. It's just what your brain internalized from living through that experience. If you had a parent that was excessively critical or someone that neglected themselves because they had this martyr mentality and were so consumed sacrificing for the family, if you had, a parent who struggled with anger management, if you had a family that had financial difficulties and there were constant messages being sent about, how little money we have, or you can't waste this because the poor kids in Africa are starving. Like, I mean, there are just so many things, so much that has been programmed into your brain, and we don't even realize how much that dictates our current behavior. So it's a beautiful invitation to just reflect on your past, but ideally do it with someone who is trauma informed and really, equipped to guide you through processing that trauma. We absolutely don't want to relive any trauma, but we want to be able to keep your nervous system presently safe and calm as you work through these past memories and experiences to identify how they're showing up in your current life. And then again, like work to build your capacity for discomfort and doing things differently than you've always done, because in that new repetition you are creating new neurotags that shorten your response time from how you used to respond to then automatically responding in the new way you desire to be.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And when you are working with moms and they at the beginning are kind of recognizing what these existing neurotags are by kind of looking at how they were parented and those relationships and everything, and you're starting to get some of that understanding, like you said, maybe of the complex trauma that they experienced. How do you start with them kind of shifting in the day to day? So for me, I always would think it funny in some of these books where they would be like, just find a quiet place and count to 10 and breathe deeply. And I'm like, where is this magical place? Because usually, if my husband's working in our bedroom, my closet is off limits. If I go to the basement and try to get into a room, then there's banging on the door, mommy, mommy, mommy. Again, not so much now, but definitely when they were in, in the toddler phase. And so there's no magical place. Like there's nowhere for me to go in this home, and I still have to be caring for them. So when you have like this understanding of your neurotags, but in the moment you're recognizing like I'm being triggered, I need to respond differently. How do you work with your clients to start changing those responses that normally feel very automatic? Like this is what happens, so they can start feeling say that safety and then be able to respond from that place of safety and hopefully a regulated nervous
Mm,
system.
such a good question. I really want women to know that while change is so possible and often so much faster than we even think, it's rare that you completely rewrite a neurotag. It is more likely that you will always be subconsciously triggered by whatever it is. But the goal is then to have greater and greater awareness that you are being triggered and insert more of a pause between the trigger and your response. And the way that I love to help women do this is through a bunch of neurosomatic tools. We do a lot of capacity building and other tools for just helping the nervous system know it is presently safe, kind of again, like you said, you can't really escape your current circumstances, but you can turn inwards and build up your skill of interoception, which is your awareness of the sensations inside your own body, and then connect how you are feeling and what you are sensing with the reality that you are not actually being chased by that saber-toothed tiger or under immediate threat as your brain perceives. And we just really start with a lot of physical work. I think one of the biggest maybe false beliefs out there is that if you want to change something in your life, you just adopt a new mindset. And I love raising awareness of the fact that you can't change your mindset until your nervous system has the capacity to adopt a new belief, because that new belief will itself be perceived as a threat when your nervous system has had all these years of building the neurotags of the false beliefs that trigger you. And so we just want to have so much grace with ourselves. I think so much of motherhood is about, just not making the gap between how we want to be or how we think we should be and how we actually are, not making that gap wrong. Everybody has a gap. Nothing is going to be perfect. We are going to have some moments where we really do respond well, and we're so proud of how we handled that situation. And I could tell you plenty of other situations where I didn't handle things well as I did in the corn situation. So, it's very easy, especially for women like us, to be so critical, and that is in itself one of our underlying stress responses, one of our neurotags, because we overthink and we think that because we did this one thing less than perfect, then we are somehow a failure, right? and we just aggrandize the perceived error and can't let it go and can't move on and forgive ourselves. So I really help women with first creating that physical awareness and physical safety in your body to re-regulate your nervous system no matter what's going on around you. And then as your brain sees that, okay, I am actually okay, I am surviving this moment, I have survived all of these hard things, then you're calming down your, primal lizard brain, and you are then able to re-access your prefrontal cortex for problem solving and like accessing your ideal self. One of the exercises I love running my clients through is actually giving names to the different parts of your brain and giving it a like personifying the smart part of your brain, the rational part versus the toddler part of your brain that is your primal lizard brain dictating 90% of your responses, right? When we personify those, then we can engage in a dialogue in our head, and it may feel crazy at first, but you come to recognize just how often the negative person in your mind is the one that is speaking. And you can then intentionally call on the higher self brain and have that person offer their perspective. What would that version of you do? And either have the two brains converse with one another, or you get to be the mediator and the judge. It's a very silly exercise, and a lot of us serious, highly responsible women can feel silly doing that at first, but it's incredibly helpful to externalize the messages, the beliefs, the thoughts that we all have in our head, right? We're being served so many thoughts all of the time, but again, the vast majority of, if not all of them, are coming from these pre-wired beliefs and messages that don't necessarily correspond with how you want to respond. And you have infinite capability to change all of that and just build up your capacity. I know I'm going on and on, but I guess I just want to spill all the beans here. And the other big thing I'm so passionate about helping women know is that there are inevitable times where you will naturally have more or less capacity, where your nervous system is already overstimulated and can't take much more. So in those moments, of course you're going to get triggered. Of course you're going to be less than your ideal self. And the more you know when those windows are, you can plan around it, you can give yourself more grace, and then really lean into the moments where you have higher capacity. So I'm just such a big proponent of understanding this brain body connection and really syncing your whole life with the many different factors that go into how much capacity and emotional regulation you have on a regular basis, because it's always fluctuating.
Those are such incredible and helpful tips. And even the personifying, I've done that a little bit with my youngest, who, if he gets hangry, he really is very dysregulated and it impacts the whole family. So we've talked about lizard brain and sort of like the downstairs brain and upstairs brain. But a lot of times we think, oh, that's just sort of a simplistic way to explain it to a child. But for ourselves, it's helpful because recognizing we aren't our thoughts and like, what are they? And if we actually were to say them out loud or to write them down, looking and seeing, is this actually true? I think about the four questions. It's Loving What Is by, now I can't remember the person. I'll remember it and put it in the show notes. But it's four questions. It's like, is this true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? Who would you be if you didn't have this thought? And then the fourth one is like you kind of sort of switch things around or flip the script on the actual statement. And it's been incredibly helpful for me because I can say something like, well, I'm a bad mom because, and if you're actually writing it out, you're like, well, is that actually true? And like, what truth am I holding that up against? So I think the externalizing your thoughts and then also kind of personifying those parts of the brain. Like I can't even think of anything cute. I usually love alliteration, but I'll have to name my brain parts at another time. But
It
um
really it really comes down to two important truths. Number one is that so much of the primal brain, the one that is so critical and is speaking to you 90% of the time, that is very often a parent's voice or your caregiver's voice, right? Something that was drilled into you for better or worse from a very young age. And I think it's just very important that we all come to recognize that. And then going back to our very beginning of the conversation, talking about your identity and knowing who you are, right? One of your invitations now in this phase of life is separating your identity from the identity you were given by your parents and the messages they gave to you. The second truth is then what we as mothers or parents, right? What we do not heal, we inevitably pass on to our children. And again, no mother I know would ever intentionally wound her child. Our parents surely were not intentionally trying to hurt us. They were doing the best they could under the circumstances. But when you know better, you are able to help your children in so many ways, especially help them, as you're doing with your children, understand their emotions, realize that they have every right to feel how they feel. And also, we don't handle these emotions in these ways, right? There are boundaries. There are social norms. There are just so many things that kids need to learn, but they cannot learn those lessons in a dysregulated state. And their emotional regulation starts with your emotional regulation.
Yeah, that's incredibly helpful. And gosh, I just feel like I've learned so much. And like I said, I kind of geek out on the science, but then also it's great reflection, for all of us, kind of like, okay, well, where are we at? And giving grace to ourselves and understanding our capacity, but then being able to sort of move forward so that we can hopefully respond, maybe in a different way. And I know that you have a free gift for us, and I would love if you could talk to us about that, and then also where everyone can connect with you.
I am so honored to be here and would love to connect with everyone. I am the host of the More Time for Mom podcast. So that would be the best place to go over and find me. I'm also very active on Instagram at Solutions for Simplicity. And then I would love to offer all of your listeners my free masterclass. It's called 6 Hidden Sources of Stress and How to Fix Them. And I really run through a lot of kind of secret culprits that are stealing your time and joy, and then what you think the problem is versus what the real root problem actually is, and how you can go about and solve those things so that you have more calm, more peace, more joy in your life. I just want every mom to reclaim her own joy and teach her children, model for her children that your happiness matters, right? Mom's mental well-being is the number one predictor of kids' happiness and success. So we moms, we can no longer be these martyrs that are putting ourselves last and giving everything for our family. We really do need to take care of ourselves, know ourselves, learn to work with our own nervous systems, and from there, the whole family can flourish. I've lived it. My husband will always be the first one to say what a wholly different person I am now than even 5 years ago, let alone earlier than that. So change is
Wonderful.
so possible, and I'm honored to share everything I know.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was just such a blessing to be able to chat with you. And yeah, definitely everyone check out the masterclass, check out the podcast, and I'll have everything in the show notes. So thank you again, Amber, for coming on the show. It was really great chatting with you.
Thank you so much. I loved it.
Hey, Mama, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, could you please share this episode with another mom who is feeling overwhelmed? Also, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a 5-star written review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Finally, if you would like more support, come on over to our free Facebook group, tinyurl.com/moms overcoming overwhelm. Can't wait to connect with you soon.